Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 125 of Crunch Time. I'm going to be your host for today's episode, and I am Tanner Dislin. And as always, I am joined by Sam Gotzi, and we are the N326 duo. It was an exhausting weekend, Sam, because we did the damn thing. We watched so much basketball. It was absolutely awesome. We talk about it all the time. That Thursday and Friday are absolutely the two best days in sports. We both agree on that. But into the round of 32 on Saturday and Sunday, all the basketball we watched, men's, women's. Sam, how are you feeling?
Man, I am great, Tanner. Had an interesting March Madness to kick it off. Had some upsets, some blowouts. Had the storylines. We had it all this past weekend. It's a best tournament, best postseason, and it's not even close. And I was here for all of it.
Absolutely, man. We have a full episode talking about March Madness. We'll start off mainly on the men's side of things. Then we'll get into some questions. We'll talk a little bit about the women's bracket side of things from those questions, and we'll get into it here in a second. But before we do all of that, as always, we do start with our winners and losers. We usually say of the week, but I have a feeling this time it's going to be winners and losers of the weekend. Sam, who is your winner?
Yeah, my winner has to be Grand Canyon's own Tyon Grant Foster. He underwent two heart surgeries and didn't play for 2 years after collapsing while playing for DePaul in 2021. And in the Antelopes upset win over St. Mary's, he dropped 22. Was kind of one of the big upsets of the tournament to kick it off. But just a crazy story with Tyon Grant Foster. So definitely deserving of the winner of the episode.
Absolutely, man. We talked about him last episode when Eric was on talking about this Grand Canyon team, a team that likes to get up and down the floor, score a lot of points. And a lot of that is on the back of number 7, Tyon Grant Foster. An absolute performance from him and great perseverance coming out of those two surgeries. But before we move on, Sam, I got to ask a question. Do we think that Grand Canyon's fans are real?
Yeah, that was interesting, to say the least. I mean, we all know uh, the stories behind Grand Canyon being an online university, but recently Twitter has been going crazy with the it's just a giant money laundering business. Um, you know, I think it is legit, but I think a lot of those fans were like, I'm gonna cheer for the underdog. I'm gonna go buy a shirt because I'm here.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think
fair
there
enough.
were some fans, but I think a large majority of them were actually not. They were just fans of opposing teams that wanted that upset.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And to be honest, in that question, I wasn't trying. I know there's a lot of stuff out there, and I encourage everyone to do their own research. I don't want to sway anyone's opinion about the validity of the university as itself, but it always seems so odd. They are always so energetic. I remember a couple years ago when Iowa played Grand Canyon. I remember that image stuck in my head where Iowa was beaten by like 15 or 20, and Grand Canyon hits like a three to cut it to a 17-point game, and the fans went absolutely crazy. And it's like, are they watching?
Yeah.
Like, do they know what's going on? Yeah, so thought that would be an interesting one to bring up. But for my winner of the weekend, Sam, I think this might be the best performance of the weekend, unless I'm forgetting someone, which I don't think I am. And it led to a memorable game. I'm gonna stay in state. My winner is gonna be Audi Crooks because she absolutely balled in the Iowa State first round game against Maryland, in which Iowa State won that 93-86. Um, Audi Crooks had 40. She had 40, and I believe she shot 18 for 20 from the field. So 40 points and shooting 90% from the field. That's about as good as it gets. Efficient and high, um, and high output. And it was an absolutely masterful performance from Audi Crooks. And Iowa State was down 20 in this game, and they turned around and came back and won by 7 on the back of number 55. So definitely deserves to be a winner. I mean, I certainly don't think there was a better performance out of anyone than Audi Crooks put up on Friday night. So shout out Audi Crooks. What a great performance. Iowa State gave Stanford a little run for their money too in the round of 32. Unfortunately, could not come away with that victory. But what a performance from Audi.
Yeah. Unfortunately, her second game didn't go
No.
as well. I think she shot like 3 for 21. But yeah, I mean, it seemed everyone was talking about that impressive performance in round one. So yeah, hats off to Audi Crooks, man.
Yeah, she balled. She absolutely balled. And when you put up 40, we'll look past the other game. It's okay. But turn around, looking at the other side of things. Who is your loser of the episode?
Yeah, this man is being thrown in the dirt right now. And that is a NBA player who I didn't even know played in the league, but he is making headline news right now, joining Mr. Shohei Ohtani with being involved in some gambling. He story goes he's been betting on himself and making excuses of why he needs to be pulled. I saw one of the cards, $80,000, pay out 1.1 million, under 8.5 points, under 4.5 assists, under 1.5 3-pointers, and then a couple other things. It also came out that he was on a Discord, uh, basically telling what to trade and bet on. Like in stock market, you have to pay $50 to see a premium room. But in the main room, they were all discussing things in the NBA and Jontay, and people are thanking Jontay for their winnings, which is just wild stuff. Just absolutely crazy. He's covering up not playing by saying he's sick. So it's crazy. And on it all kind of started on March 20th in a game versus the Suns. Porter played just 3 minutes before leaving the game due to what was said to be an illness. He had not scored, attempted, and missed one shot and had 2 rebounds. Sportsbooks has his over-under set at around 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds. The next day, DraftKings, which is probably the biggest sports book in the country right now, reported to its user that Porter's prop bet was the number one moneymaker from the night. So just absolutely insane story. We all know with Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter being in that gambling pro, and then this on top of it is just crazy.
A little bit. There are a few things about this specific case. Number one, betting on your own unders and faking injuries and illnesses is absolutely hilarious. Like that is of when anytime someone mentions something about a player betting on their own games, I never think it's like, I just can't imagine. I didn't expect it to be his unders, like his personal unders. And then he's saying, I don't care about my stats. I want to make money. That's absolutely hilarious to me. And when I think it would be, my expectation would be bet is over. And then every time he got the ball, just chuck it and try to get as many points as possible. So that's absolutely hilarious. There's a clip of him during this season. I don't know if you saw it, where he as the shot clock was counting down, he chucked up a 3 and made it. And then everyone else was going crazy. It was a pretty low percentage shot. And then you zoom in on him, and he's just like looking all as pissed as he can. Yeah, he definitely had his under in that game. But then that of course leads to the bigger conversation. I love sports betting. I do it all the time. I think it's a fun way to be engaged with sports. It's something I love to do. But when you integrate it so much with the league, I mean, you do partnerships between the league and the books. You do all pregame shows have lines, and they have their suggested same game parlays. it's crazy to me how involved this is. I don't understand. Oh, I can't understand because everyone wants to make money and money talks, but it just seemed like they should be 110% kept separate, and they shouldn't interact, and all this like promotion of it is really going to make things look like betting is okay to do within the league, and it's going to make the league itself look maybe a little bit hypocritical when they're pushing all this sports gambling stuff, and then one of their employees does it, and he's fined, banned, whatever, suspended. So this, it's honestly crazy. It hasn't happened before, and this seems to be like it could be somewhat commonplace if this isn't handled better. It seems, but for my loser of the episode, Sam, I am going to go with head coaches. Head coaches, because we had two instances that were particularly bad. We'll start on the women's side of things. I'm sure we've all heard about this hit piece coming in on Kim Mulkey about some of her actions. And to start her press conference the way she did, basically just saying everything is false, that this is ridiculous. We're trying to take our focus off this run and have such a prepared statement in the middle of a March Madness run and attack the journalist who, by all accounts, is doing normal journalist things, was definitely a decision. And I think what hilariously happened is that she completely inadvertently just took the nation's eyes, who probably they saw that maybe there was an article coming out, and they were like, oh, maybe I'll take a look at it. But as soon as she opened her mouth about it, everybody is locked in on this Washington Post article to see what exactly is going on. She gave off, I mean, it's hard to speculate when we don't know the accusations. We haven't read the article. We don't know much about it. But she did not come across as someone who was innocent. And yeah, it was a very, very tough look, and Twitter had a good couple of hours or so just clowning the reaction and talking about how I wasn't interested before, but I'm damn sure interested now. And if it were to happen, I mean, how many times has she been a loser on our on the loser of the episode in the past? All the time. And it seems like we'll just add one more to the list, because the downfall of Kim Mulkey will definitely be something that we will keep an eye on and may or may not celebrate. But my other one is Bill Self, because Kansas barely survived Samford. And frankly, you could argue that they shouldn't have, because another loser I thought about, thought long and hard about, was possibly doing the officials, because the officials have been awful. But I figured we shouldn't just keep talking about the officials in every game, even though this one definitely deserves to be talked about, because Samford, down one, got an absolutely clean block on Kansas and was leading the other way on a 5-on-4 to potentially take the lead. Of course, it was called a foul, even though it was one of the cleanest blocks I've ever seen, one of the best defensive plays I have seen in a while. But anyway, they should have lost to Samford. But then they go out and they play Gonzaga in the next round, and they get absolutely shit pumped. Call it what it is. They got smoked. And frankly, I mean, it would, this whole year for Kansas, they were the preseason number one. They got, I would say, probably the number two transfer in Hunter Dickinson, behind Caleb Love was probably number one. But Hunter Dickinson comes in, preseason number one. This team is supposed to be the class of the Big 12. They finished sixth in their conference, and around a 32 exit in which they got absolutely smoked. It was an absolutely colossal letdown year for Kansas, and they looked lifeless all year long. And then after all that, Bill Self gets into his press conference and says, to be honest with you, I'm just thinking about next year. What an absolutely awful thing to say. This is college sports. This is not professionals. We don't build for the future. There are players who have given their all to your program that have one more year to try and make something special happen. And you, as the coach, as the leader of them, isn't even thinking about this year and is thinking about next year. That is just unbelievably awful. It really pisses me off when he says something like that. And I feel bad for any seniors or anyone on that team that will not be coming back to Kansas, because that's absolutely BS. and the rest of that team deserve better. Whether they underperformed or not, they deserve to have a coach who was focused on this run and not thinking about next year. So that one really pissed me off. And some interesting press conferences, Sam, over the weekend.
Yeah. The Bill Self one, starting with that one was crazy. I just don't understand how you say that. Uh, just wild. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens with Kansas. Because if you're a player on that team that was thinking about coming back, do you really want a guy that said last year didn't mean shit, basically?
Like, yeah, what if you have one more year of eligibility left? You have one more ride.
Yeah. And then it's just crazy. And then the Kim Mulkey one, um, who knows what's going to come out of that. Washington Post has the chance to do the funniest thing ever and say how much community work, how great she is, because she said everything in the article is going to be false. So that would be hilarious. But I think it's gonna, I mean, she's been a head coach for a while now. Got obviously her fame from Baylor. Have heard she isn't the greatest person in the world with those who have worked with her at Iowa State, but it's definitely gonna be interesting. And like you said, I had no idea Washington Post was coming out with a story about Kim Mulkey, but her addressing it probably just boosted the numbers that are going to be read by like 1,000%.
Whoever wrote that article should write her a thank you for bringing so much
for
attention
real
to this article. This is going to do absolute numbers, right? So yeah, I it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy how people can still like after all these years. I mean, you said not the greatest person. We have all the stories. I know Kim Mulkey and Brittany Griner didn't exactly see eye to eye, and those stories are out there, and I encourage you to look them up. But yeah, by all accounts, she is not the greatest person. The comments after the South Carolina fight, just time and time again, she proves that she's just not the best person in the world. And hopefully this Washington Post article can bring that to light and maybe put an end to her career. That may seem a little harsh, but it's really frustrating to see all these terrible people who are just not good people continue to be praised and have success when all that is going on behind closed doors. But let's dive into this bracket. You ready to dive into the bracket?
Let's do it.
All right, let's start in the Eastern region. So as most of you know, thus far we have played the round of 64 and the round of 32. So we have our Sweet 16, and we're just going to go region by region, kind of recap what went on, talk about some of the upsets, take a look forward into these Sweet 16 matchups and who can possibly come out of this region. So we'll start in the East, and we'll do in chronological order. We'll start with the round of 64. At the top of this bracket, UConn took care of business. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. FAU Northwestern. The game went to overtime, but Sam, I'm not sure I want to talk about an FAU team that is up there with Kansas for a team that just completely punted on this season when the hype was through the roof.
Yeah, and they had a chance to win this one, Tanner. Jontay Davis looked like he was playing a pickup game where the score didn't matter down the stretch. Drove and missed it, causing them to go into overtime, and then Boo Booey and those Wildcats got done.
Yeah, they got absolutely smoked in overtime. And to add insult to injury, after all that, everything you said, Sam, Jontay Davis seemingly disinterested in putting any sort of pressure on the rim and just kind of hanging out around the 3-point line as the time is expiring. But that insult to injury, head coach Dusty May, who's been one of the best in college basketball for a little bit now, down at FAU, he's leaving to go to Michigan. So all of that with an absolute just disaster of a season for FAU, coming off of a Final Four run a year ago. So that just pretty much wraps it up for the Owls. Northwestern, pretty impressive in overtime. That's what I have to say about that. San Diego State took care of business. But the first upset that we're going to talk about happened in the East region, Sam. Yale took down Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, Yale pulled it out in the end. It was kind of a competitive game back and forth, but let's be honest here, Tanner. this game shouldn't have even been close. It was very clear that Auburn was the better, more talented team, but it seemed it was Yale's day, and Yale got it done, pulling out a big upset. Unfortunately, their Cinderella run did not last even 2 games, but it was fun to see Auburn go down, especially when Bruce Pearl is coaching that squad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything you said. Auburn, fresh off their SEC tournament run, they were a pretty popular pick. They had a little steam behind them in that really tough East region with a lot of conference tournament champions. We talked about it a little bit last week that there's always one conference tournament champion who gets into the field and just falls on their face, and that was Auburn. Auburn in this game, but the story of Yale taking down Auburn was the shot making of John Polidakis. I don't really know how to say his name, but he had 28 in this game, multiple big time shots. The lefty for Yale was absolutely incredible, and the main reason why they won. This game was all about John Polidakis.
Yeah.
But moving on, an upset that you and I both had, the Duquesne Dukes took down BYU. To me, Sam, this is all about BYU just didn't make shots.
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of the story coming in to the tourney with BYU, and it's the fact they shot like the least. They are mid-range and 3-point team, and that was very apparent in this matchup. BYU couldn't hit shots, and it's hard to hit to get a dub in this tournament when you're not hitting shots, especially when you are playing a underdog that a lot of people looked over, didn't think much of, but we did.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, everything you said was absolutely correct. BYU. I mean, it's just a team like that. You're one cold streak away from getting upset, and that's exactly what happened. Illinois seemed like they kind of handled business against Moorhead. Played with their food a little bit in the first half, but in the second half, really put Moorhead away. That leads us to Drake, Washington State. The entire room in the last episode was all in on Drake. We loved the Bulldogs coming off of an absolute collapse at the hands of Miami last year. Tucker DeVries couldn't hit the broadside of a barn a year ago. Coming into this game, we were all over Drake. They had the lead, Sam, and they choke it away once again to Washington State.
Yeah, choke job, classic choke job. It was it seemed Drake got in a little bit of early foul trouble that hurt him down the stretch for sure. But yeah, not a great performance from the Drake Bulldogs. Tucker DeVries again, not a memorable march. Only have 14 points in this one in just 38 minutes. He is their lead scorer throughout the season, and it just seemed like he could. And he struggled to say the least, and then only having 4 points coming off the bench is tough, especially in this grueling March.
Absolutely. And then, of course, similar to FAU, just to add insult to injury, a little salt in the wound. Darian DeVries, head coach for Drake, and presumably Tucker DeVries, as we just talked about, their leading scorer throughout the year, easily their best player. Darian is definitely going to West Virginia. Tucker probably will be following to West Virginia as well. So it seems like an influx of talent going over to Morgantown, but it's leaving Des Moines, and Drake's definitely going to hurt that. So a brutal couple of weeks for Drake, especially coming off of the choke against Miami last year. But yeah, really frustrating stuff if you're a Drake fan. And then to round out the East, Iowa State took care of business against South Dakota.
Yeah, not surprising coming off that hot win over Houston in that Big 12 tournament. We saw kind of the tale of two instances of where a championship hurts you and where it doesn't. It seemed Iowa State was firing on all cylinders, got it done. fairly easy against the Jackrabbits.
And it just puts it just everyone out there filling a bracket knows you're like, oh, this team just won their conference tournament. They're going to the Sweet 16. They're going to the Elite Eight. And then you have the other side where it's don't trust the conference champions. Turns out it's a coin toss. There's no way to lean on that side of things. Just sometimes the team comes out sharp, sometimes they do not. And that was exactly the case with Auburn and Iowa State. But moving on to the round of 32 matchups. We will start out. I mean, again, right now, does UConn look like the best team in the field?
Yeah, by far.
By far.
It's not even close.
They absolutely took Northwestern to school. I believe they beat them by like 17 or 18, but it was 25-27 with 10 minutes left in the first half. I mean, it was that much of an absolute blitzing. So UConn pretty comfortably going to the Sweet 16. San Diego State, Yale, as you said. Yale was an awesome story for the first game. Absolutely fell flat. San Diego State took it to Yale, and they're heading to the Sweet 16 as well. Duquesne, Illinois, our third absolute blowout of the round of 32 from this region. Illinois, Duquesne was completely outmatched by Illinois. Iowa State, Washington State, while not as big of a gap between the two teams, Iowa State kind of led that one wire to wire and kept Washington State at an arm's length. Certainly within the last, I believe Washington State led 10-2 off the in the first four, but Iowa State quickly rebounded and then kept them at an arm's length. So those were the round of 32 matchups. Anything to add there? I kind of went fast because there was not a lot of great matchups in this region, so I just kind of went with it. But
yeah, it was pretty chalky, unfortunately, in the round of 32 in the East, but it's setting up for a lot of good matchups in the Sweet 16.
Definitely. Definitely. So then we'll go to the West now. North Carolina, Wagner. I mean, not much to talk about there. North Carolina handled business. Michigan State, Mississippi State, hand up. This has to be one of the worst reads in the history of March. I had Mississippi State beating Michigan State and then going to the Elite Eight, going on a little bit of a run. And simply put, I got Izzo.
Yeah, never go against Izzo. We learned that the hard way this year, but even when he doesn't have a team that has lived up to expectations, he could still do some March magic.
Yeah, I tell you what, if I'm a Michigan State fan, I'm really frustrated with this team because we know it's Michigan State. They're going to have talent. And specifically, this team's backcourt is really damn good. Tyson Walker, really good guard, and Michigan State's guards as a whole. I mean, they took Mississippi State to school, and where was that most of the season? I think is what a lot of Michigan State fans are wondering because you win a few more games, you don't get that 8 seed, you don't have to play North Carolina in the round of 32, so things may have gone differently for Michigan State. But yeah, what an awful read by me. But continuing down, Grand Canyon and St. Mary's, Sam. We talked about Tyon. What's his name?
Tyon.
Grant Foster?
Yeah.
Talked about Tyon, Grant Foster. Grand Canyon gets the upset win over the Girls.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the matchup of completely different game styles. We had St. Mary's, who likes to slow it down. Where you down with the small, taking up a lot of possession, and Grand Canyon, who likes to run and gun, ended up outlasting the slow it down, and we'll beat you that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of us talked about it. Grant Foster was the best player on the floor during this game, and it showed. Grand Canyon gets that upset win. One that I think we a few of us had on the show here. So shout out us for calling that one correctly. But moving on, excuse me, Alabama, Charleston. The Tide took control of this one, Sam, and did not let it go.
Yeah, I mean, they only won 109-96, but still got the job done regardless. Definitely concerning as Alabama gets deeper and deeper into this tournament. Where's that defense again come from? They got over Grand Canyon, but definitely gonna be some interesting matchups coming down the stretch.
No doubt about it. Moving on, this has to be the biggest disappointment for me, and that's New Mexico and Clemson. Because, well, honestly, I think it might be the biggest disappointment and the biggest surprise in the entire field. Biggest disappointment got to be New Mexico coming off of that Mountain West win. They were as hot as any team in the field. We talked about their backcourt being one of the better in college basketball when it got hot. They fell flat on their face, and Clemson absolutely smoked them. What an incredibly disappointing performance from the Lobos.
Yeah, it didn't seem like this was even close to being a game at any point. Clemson took lead from the start and never gave it up.
Yeah, totally. And I know I had New Mexico in the round of 32. I think a lot, or in the Sweet 16, excuse me. I think there was some steam for that as well across social media and people on TV. And yeah, they just came out absolutely flat. Really frustrating for New Mexico. Baylor took care of Colgate. Not much to talk about there. Colgate continues their red hot streak of, I believe that's now 6 straight NCAA tournament bids and 6 straight round of 64 losses. Dayton, Nevada, a little bit of fireworks in this one, Sam. It was a great game. Nevada, an absolute choke job, similar to what Cincinnati did against Nevada a few years ago, if you remember that game. Nevada loses this when they were up by 20 plus.
Yeah, absolutely collapsed by Nevada, led by none other than Steve Alford. But yeah, absolutely collapsed. And props to Dayton. They could have given up when they were down by 20. But they stuck with it, grinded it out, and ended up getting a big win over Nevada.
No doubt about it. Arizona, Long Beach State, again, not much to add here. Arizona played with their food a little bit, similar to Illinois in the last region in the first half, but Long coming out in the second half and just smoked Long Beach State. So looking into the round of 32, we started things off with North Carolina, Michigan State. Spartans put together a good fight. They got off to a red hot start. Heels took control and did not look back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Heels, I mentioned, I said they were the weakest 1 seed. I still, after seeing everything that's going on, I still think that's true. But Michigan State didn't quite have enough to take down the Heels. Going on to our next round of 32 game, Grand Canyon, Alabama, the matchup of the similar play styles. And my goodness, was this game an absolute mess, but it is exactly why college basketball is awesome.
Yeah, this one was interesting. It seemed Alabama could slightly slow down Grand Canyon and just outscore them in this one.
No doubt about it. I think we had even talked about, Eric had mentioned the over under for this game might be set at like 300, which I don't believe it was all that high scoring, but it just because it was high paced. Let's just say that. Not a ton of scoring per se, but it was up and down the floor. It was crazy. I think I was getting tired watching it from the couch. But the big one to talk about from this region, the Clemson Tigers, Sam, they take down Baylor. And that is now 3 straight round of 32 losses for Scott Drew and the Baylor Bears.
Yeah, I mean, tough loss for the Baylor Bears. Had high expectations going into this tournament, but the team everyone counted out at the beginning, probably the most popular upset pick, the Clemson Tigers, proving everybody wrong and why they deserve to succeed and why they're still in it. They're a good ball club. Hall, their PJ Hall, I want to say is his name, is an absolute bucket. He even didn't play well in this game, had foul trouble early. But Baylor, you gotta be looking at yourself in the mirror, asking what went wrong in this one.
Absolutely. Yeah, they have a good little trio of ball players down in Clemson. PJ Hall, you mentioned, he's their leading scorer. He was the second leading scorer in the ACC this year. Not a lot of juice for PJ Hall. I believe he was behind R.J. Davis of UNC. Then they got Joe Girard, their point guard shooter. He stroked that thing pretty well against Baylor. And then Shefflin, their big man, pretty crafty inside. He played well as well. And that's just what March is. You said the 6 seed that was underdogs to the 11 seed, they take out Baylor. And now I'm not going to sit here and say I was high on Baylor. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you definitely watched a lot more Big 12 basketball than I did this year, but it never really felt like Baylor had the juice, that they were a national title contender. But so I wasn't necessarily high on Baylor, but I tell you what, I was higher on Baylor than I was on Clemson, considering I had New Mexico to beat them in round one, and so did seem like 3/4 of the country. So shout out Clemson, man. They're in the Sweet 16. Great work out of them. We talked about their coach a little bit being a loser. I just still stand by that those comments were a little out of pocket, but I do got to give him his flowers. His team's still dancing. And then Arizona Dayton, a game that probably was closer than I originally thought it would be, but Arizona took care of the Flyers.
Yeah, not surprising. Just a better team down the stretch, and led Arizona to a big win.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, we'll go to the South region now. Houston Longwood, yeah, Houston took care of business. Nebraska A&M, Sam, it seemed like A&M's athleticism was just too much for Nebraska.
Yep, absolutely. Tominaga struggled in this one, but A&M survived in advance, baby. Wade Taylor was a bucket, and he went crazy that game. So
yeah, Wade Taylor went absolutely crazy. Maybe a little bit of an Audi Crooks treatment in terms of the next game, not so great, but for this game, he was absolutely on fire for A&M, and yeah, they absolutely wired to wire Nebraska. Didn't seem the Huskers really had any chance in that one. So Nebraska still without a March Madness tournament win. But moving on, speaking of wire to wire, Sam, James Madison takes down Wisconsin, and they also led this game wire to wire.
yeah, James Madison looked good that first round. Was probably one of the more popular picks in the upset section of everyone's March Madness bracket, and it turned out to be true. Seemed James Madison had kind of control, even though it was a close game throughout. It seemed James Madison was just doing their thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I was the airhead who said, you know what, JMU is a little bit too public. I'm going to go with Wisconsin. I'm an idiot. It was always James Madison. I mean, the most amount of wins in Division One this year, and they absolutely showed it. Wisconsin, tough look for Wisconsin. A team that was, I mean, they were top 10 this year, and then just slowly but surely declined. Kind of got a little bit of fight back in them after the Big Ten tournament. But sure enough, the season ends in a pretty much a colossal failure for a team that at one point was in the top 10. But as we keep moving down, Duke and Vermont, again, not much to talk about here. Duke, Vermont kept it somewhat close, but again, Duke kind of kept them at arm's length, and it never really felt like Vermont was going to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely.
But moving on, Texas Tech and NC State and the Wolfpack continue their hot streak, Sam. They win this game over the Red Raiders.
Yeah. This team is hot. Very physical game. We expect that from Texas Tech, but it just seemed like NC State wanted it more. America has fallen in love with their big man, DJ Burns, putting on a clinic throughout the tournament so far. Horn put on a show as well, and Diarra as well. So that big three right there is a force to be reckoned with, and unfortunately, Texas Tech got the best of it.
This team is the story of two letters. DJs. DJ Horn, and of course, DJ oh my God, what can I think of? DJ
Burns.
And DJ Burns, of course. Yeah, the two of them they're playing great ball right now, and NC State obviously as a team is playing great ball right now. I personally was all over Texas Tech in this game, and that was an absolutely awful read. They continue their hot streak, and again put another notch into the paradox of does the extremely hot uh, conference tournament champion, do they go far? Do they continue their hot streak, or do they fall flat on their flat on their face? NC State continues to dance. And then Florida, Colorado. Sam, this the game of the game of the first round?
No, because the one you skipped over, Kentucky, Oakland, was the game of the first round. How dare you disrespect my guy, Jack Golke, putting on a clinic from outside. Jack Golke, the golden boy of March Madness, upset the Kentucky Wildcats. It's bringing up a very valid question. Calipari got a lot of hate for this upset. Are we moving away from the five freshmen and going far in the tournament to let's be honest here, much less talented Oakland, but they have more experience? It seems to be treading in the way of more experience gives you deeper runs in this one, but Oakland, what a story.
That is absolutely brutal. How is that the one game that I skip over? I promise you that was not intentional. Yes, Oakland took down Kentucky in the marquee upset of the first round. I like what you did there. He was the golden boy for the Golden Grizzlies. I like it. Yeah, 10 threes off the bench for Golke. He is absolutely the perfect March Madness guy, from his performance to his look to his season stats, only attempting 7 2-pointers throughout the season. In their second round matchup versus NC State, his odds to make a 2-point basket were like plus 700 in that game, because all he does is catch and shoot, and he was absolutely magnificent in this game. And of course, as you were alluding to, the comments from Jay Wright about how the team of freshmen, these guys are good players, and they'll probably go on to the NBA and be good players, but they were not the better college basketball team, because that was Oakland, a team that played together, a team that played team defense, that played team offense, kicked to open shooters, and took it inside when needed. Really impressive stuff from the Golden Grizzlies, and absolutely the marquee upset. And of course, another horrible read by myself, having Kentucky in the Final Four. Yeah, Oakland was the story of the tournament, no doubt about it, on that first day. But now, Florida, Colorado. This game was also awesome. Florida hitting a big time three to tie it late in the game, only for Colorado to hit a Kawhi Leonard-esque shot from the corner that bounces around the rim a million times, but went in, and Colorado took down the Gators.
Yeah, it seemed like this matchup, either people had Florida going to Sweet 16 or they had them losing first round. Colorado, what a shot. We always love a good buzzer beater, especially when it's an upset. But Colorado got it done. Crazy finish, but ended up with the big victory and survived in advance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Did you have Marquette beating Florida? Or did you have that Colorado?
I think let me pull it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure I did have in this bracket. I did have Florida beating Marquette, so
Yeah,
a little tough.
I swear there's not a person on this earth who had Marquette beating Florida. It just everyone had either as you said, Florida going far or Colorado getting the upset. Absolutely awesome game. It was electric, and it was going on. It was at the same time as Yale Auburn. So the two games side by side coming down to the wire was absolutely electric. Got things, but it was at the end of that like first little run right before the break. So there's the only two games on, and it's like, oh, we don't have as many basketball games. We got 2 absolute bangers, and that was absolutely awesome. But to round it out of the round of 64, Marquette and Western Kentucky. Not much to add here. Marquette, Tyler Kolek back healthy, put on a show, and the Golden Eagles move on. So round of 32, starting off with that 1-8 matchup, Houston A&M. It absolutely did not disappoint, Sam. Houston gets the win in overtime.
Yeah, it came down the wire, I believe. Did go into OT. Was up super late, obviously locked in because we sleep in May. But personally, I think the experience of the Houston Cougars, especially their point guard Sheed, kind of let it down because blanking on the other guard's name, but he fouled out. Pryor fouled out. Then Sharp fouled out late in the game, but Sheed had a beautiful hop step to put the lead over Texas A&M, and then Wade Taylor talked about how electric he was in that Nebraska matchup. Struggled.
Not great.
A lot. 5 for 21. Still had like 25 points and still hit the crazy shot towards the end of the game. But yeah, Houston, no matter how ugly, all that matters is you get a win.
No doubt about it. And Sharp was absolutely incredible for Houston. He had 30 by himself. Of course, he did foul out. Shed fouled out. He fouled out within like the last 10 seconds. So they played all of overtime with Shed. Crier fouled out. Incredibly physical game. You mentioned Wade Taylor, not his best performance. But Radford kind of picked up the slack a little bit, adding 15 rebounds to his line. I was impressed with Texas A&M. Those 2 guards, man, they can really score the basketball. Taylor more so in round 1 than this round, but the buzzer beater to send it to overtime was absolutely electric. Had us buzzing super late. We wanted to go to bed. The shot goes in. We were right back in it. It was awesome. Probably the game of the second round. But what was absolutely not the game of the second round was James Madison Duke. It's a shame. I was really excited for it. I was all in on this James Madison team after a really impressive performance over Wisconsin. I think the most important thing, I said it before, was wire to wire for James Madison. They lay an egg against Duke and get absolutely smoked.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is hard when your best player, Terrence Edwards Jr., gets 2 fouls early. I want to say like he had 2 within the first 5 minutes of the game. And Duke cannot miss. Jared McCain, we all know, hit 8 threes, scored 30 points. Basically, it seemed like James Madison didn't have a pulse in this one, and Duke took advantage behind Jared McCain's 8 threes.
That's exactly what happened. That's the story starts and ends with Jared McCain. He was absolutely on fire, and he was on fire from the start. And at the under 4, it was 18-4 Duke, and they never ever looked back.
Yeah, I think McCain had like 22 of their 30 first half points, which is crazy.
I also think he set a rookie freshman 3-point record in the tournament. Yeah, there's nothing else that we can say that hasn't been said. He just simply did not miss. Another candidate, honestly, for the game of the round in the round of 32, Sam, was this NC State Oakland game. Another one that went to overtime. I mean, we love pushing NC State through. Unfortunately, it came at the cost of Oakland and our darling Jack Oakland.
Yeah, it seemed like this was the battle of the fan favorites, DJ Burns and Jack Golke, of course. But NC State shut Golke down, basically let everyone else try to score on Oakland and shut Golke down. I'm looking at Golke's stats here. He only had, I guess he did play pretty well, but 22 points for Golke after setting the world on fire for against Kentucky. But again, the big three of the Wolfpack coming out again in this one. DJ Burns putting on a show, 24 points, 11 rebounds. Oakland couldn't stop him. And that's really what it came down to. You got your DR, you got your Horn, O'Connell even contributing. But when you have DJ Burns, that man is unstoppable.
No doubt about it. He is just silky smooth in the paint. It's crazy to see. Incredible passing ability. I also got to shout out Trey Townsend for
Yeah,
for Oakland.
he was hooping.
He had 30 himself, logged a ton of minutes, played 45 the entire game. Golke played 42 himself. Those two combined for 52. The team had 73. Not a lot of help. No one else in double figures. 2 points off the bench by people not named Jack Golke. I mean, obviously he had 22 off the bench, but the other two came from, here's a name, Rocket Watts, former Michigan State guard. He scored the other two off the bench for Oakland. So, they just needed a little bit of extra help, and unfortunately, it did not come. But what a performance by Oakland. Just it was sad to see them go, sad to see Golke go. But however, I don't think we've seen the last of him. He is racking in the NIL deals, which is, in my opinion, exactly what NIL was made to do. Rose shot a TurboTax commercial in the hotel lobby. Like, that is exactly what it's supposed to do. It was awesome. Golke will be forever be a legend.
Yeah.
But rounding it out in the South region, Sam, Colorado and Marquette. Now, this was another awesome game.
Yeah, it seemed like this region in the round of 32, minus that James Madison Duke game, was the round of 32 to watch. It seemed like Marquette seemed to be in control most of this one, in my opinion, but Colorado wouldn't go away. This was an interesting one, to say the least, but Marquette gets it done as a 2 seed, but definitely some concerns moving on in this tournament.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But I think the story of this game, I mean, anytime we talk about Marquette, it's going to be the first words out of your mouth. Tyler Cole, like, he had 21 and 11 assists, back-to-back games with 11 assists. Simply put, I mean, Marquette's going to run. I mean, they got a date with NC State, obviously, as hot a team as any in the country right now. When they play Houston, they're going to run into teams that are more talented than them, but this team will go as far as Tyler Kolek allows them to do, because that guy is special to watch with the ball in his hand. It's good to see him back healthy. And yeah, Marquette's looking pretty good. However, I do agree there was some concern letting Colorado back in the game, and that game being as close as it was. But we do have one more region to talk about. And we'll start off with the number 1 seed, Purdue Grambling. Not much to talk about here. Unfortunately, we did not run it back with the Purdue collapse.
Yeah. When it seems like every year we talk about how different Zach Edey's going to be ref, but it seemed that wasn't the case in round 1. Grambling's big man got in foul trouble fairly quickly, picked up 2 early ones, and Purdue took advantage.
Yeah, I mean, the lock of a century is a mid-majors big man getting in foul trouble against Zach Edey, because of course it is. But yeah, Purdue takes that one comfortably. Utah State and TCU, another game I was really looking forward to. I had the Frogs and Jamie Dixon. Another bad read in the 8-9. I have to be the worst person at picking the 8-9 this year. I had FAU, Nebraska, TCU, and Mississippi State, Sam. That is a clean 0 for 4 from your boy. Every year I do the same damn thing. I cannot get that game right. But Utah State, another one that I was really excited for. I thought this had the possibility to be a really damn good basketball game. But Utah State wire to wire this thing.
Yeah. Domination.
Not much to talk about, unfortunately. Gonzaga McNeese.
Domination.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of people had McNeese coming out of this one. Turns out, when you don't play anybody, you get walloped. I thought, obviously, the running joke with Gonzaga is they don't play anybody. they played St. Mary's twice, I believe, and they did not play the School of Women in men's basketball. So McNee's schedule was tough. It clearly showed. Wasn't even competitive. Just absolute ass kicking.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Will Wade, I still think there's a good chance he's kind of got one foot out the door. He's ready to jump out and take the first opportunity necessary. And of course, another take by us about how we didn't understand. I guess us. I think I was the one who had said it. I'm not sure. Can't remember what the support was like, but I was like, St. Mary's won their conference, went 2-0 against Gonzaga. Why are these two teams the same seed? St. Mary's, of course, loses their first round. Gonzaga into the Sweet 16, smoking two teams. So, yeah, I look like an idiot once again. What else is new? Talk a little bit about this game. Kansas Samford. Samford deserved better.
Oh, 1000%. They deserve the common theme of this tournament, it seems like, is refs crumbling in crunch time. Nice. Samford had probably one of the greatest plays in all of March Madness this year. Clean as it comes. Obviously, talking about that late game foul where Timberlake was on a fast break, seemed to be an easy bucket for Kansas. And Samford made an absolute play. Of course, the blue blood gets a call, kind of sealing the win for Kansas and breaking hearts of not only Samford fans, but everybody who loves a good upset, especially over Kansas.
Yeah, this Kansas team, we talked about them so much early on in the episode. They were just so not fun throughout this year. No one really likes Hunter Dickinson at all across the country. Like everyone was all in on this Kansas team losing. It was a common pick,
especially with McCullough out.
Yeah, it was a common pick in brackets. Like everyone wanted to see this happen, and of course we get robbed by the refs. That sucked so bad. And like I understand the take. I understand the take of oh, they could have made more shots. I know, but that clean block would have, like I said before, was a 5-on-4 going the other way in a 1-point game. Horrendous. Cannot miss that call. And it sucks. It definitely sucks for Samford. But moving on, Oregon, South Carolina, another pretty common upset, and for good reason, Sam. The Ducks, again, one of those hot teams coming off a conference tournament championship, kind of handled the Gamecocks very easily.
Yeah, and Jermaine Cousinard is the reason why they took care of the Gamecocks. 40.6 assists, 4 rebounds, 5 3-pointers. He was the guy in this game. Led Oregon to a second round, and it shocked me. I'm gonna be honest, Tanner. It seems it's a crapshoot picking these conference champions to either win or lose. We saw it with New Mexico, just came out flat as hell, and then Oregon shooting lights out, but again behind Jermaine Cousinard.
Yeah, had you heard about Jermaine Cousinard before this?
It seems Oregon has those guys though. Like every March Madness, obviously
we know too well.
Chris Duarte, Dylan Brooks, even just some of the Peyton Pritchard, of course. It seems they just have one dude that goes absolutely crazy. But this year can take away from Dante, Nafale, Dante. Just those two running the pick and roll, doing what they do. It was very fun to watch. The two-man game is always a good time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We talked about Thompson and Golke over on Oakland. Another duo that needed some help was Cousinard and Dante. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Creighton and Akron, this game again was a little maybe too close.
That first half had me sweating. Tanner.
A little bit, but the Blue Jays end up handling business. Anything to add on that one? Yeah.
Other than a little first half sweat with my bracket the way it is, but they got it done, and that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. The next game, Texas and Colorado State. Seemed like Colorado State caught a case of the Virginia.
Yeah, it seems the Virginia virus is spreading amongst teams in the tournament. But Texas, not shocking to see this result at all. It was clear Texas was the better team in this one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then the last game in the round of 64, Tennessee St. Peter's. Volunteers handle business.
Yep.
Not much to add on that front. But in the round of 32, Purdue and Utah State. Boy, watching Purdue versus Grambling, I was fully convinced that we were maybe not in this round, but we were bound for another Purdue letdown because somebody's going to be able to shut down Edey, and then their guards and their shooting will all fall flat. This performance made me question that because Purdue was absolutely dominant.
Yeah, absolutely dominant. Of course, Edey got the majority of calls like he always does, but everyone should expect that at this point. Again, Utah State's big man, early foul trouble. That seems to be the recipe for disaster when you're facing these Boilermakers, but Purdue looked really freaking good.
No doubt about it. Speaking of looking damn good, although I guess there's an argument here that maybe Kansas just looks that bad, but Gonzaga, wowee, did they eat the brakes off of this Kansas Jayhawks team. And there was some justice, unfortunately not at the hands of Samford, like it deserved, but a different Bulldogs got the justice on Kansas.
Yeah, this one wasn't even close. Gonzaga, a team, like I said, against McNeese, was a team a lot of people weren't expecting to make a run. And this might be the team that goes quite far in this tournament. Got a big matchup coming Friday, but yeah, absolute domination by the Bulldogs.
That's the sick part of this whole thing. How many times did you hear about Gonzaga basketball throughout the year? Because I could tell you how many times I did. Zero. They were not talked about. Frank, simply put, they just weren't all that good a basketball team. Not ranked throughout the year, playing in their WCC, whatever. Here they are in the Sweet 16 again, and with far and away the highest margin of victory of any team in the field. Two absolute shit pumpings at the hands of the Bulldogs. So, Gonzaga looks damn good. Somehow we are still Gonzaga in the Sweet 16 and auto lock. But moving on, another candidate for game of the round, Sam, had to have been Creighton, Oregon. This game went to double overtime. We mentioned how Dante and Cuisinart needed help.
Yeah, that's really what this came down to. Shireman and Kalkenberger, or however you say his name, got the help. Ashworth kind of went crazy in overtime. And Dante and Cuisinart had zero help. Cuisinart kept it close going into the second overtime, but it was very clear he just got exhausted, lost his legs, and that's why Creighton came up on top.
Yeah, you nailed it. He was absolutely gassed. The incredible shot to send it to overtime when they were down 3. I mean, it was totally and utterly a two-person performance from Oregon. There's pretty much nothing else to say on the Oregon side of things. But on the Creighton side of things, yeah, and I feel like we need to shout out the Creighton point guard. He had himself a game in this one. Stephen Ashworth is who I'm talking about. He had 21 to lead Creighton more than Trey Alexander, more than Baylor Shireman, and more than Ryan Kalkbrenner.
There you go.
The Creighton center. But those four, Kalkbrenner had 19, Alexander had 20, Shireman 18, Ashworth 21. Those four combined for a majority of points. Everyone else on the team combined for 8. So quick math, though, they all combined for 78. So yeah, those four seem like a good core for Creighton and Sam. It looks like Kalkbrenner is going to have to be the saving grace to stop Zach Edey.
Yeah, it seems that way. Um, he seems to be the perfect match to beat out Zach Edey. Plays on the perimeter, can knock down shots, and we've seen if you can spread out this Purdue team, it's going to cause some troubles.
Yeah, and Creighton can shoot the lights out of the basketball, so that's what they're going to need to potentially take down Purdue. However, we may need to slow our roll a little bit because the Volunteers are waiting on the other side, are waiting for Creighton in this Sweet 16 matchup because they took down Texas. And again, Texas, who beat Colorado State, who beat Virginia, Texas may have caught a little Virginia as well. They did not score much in the first half.
Yeah, not at all. And Tennessee took advantage. Props to them. Yeah, Tennessee took care of business. Game seemed this looking at the score, it looks a little closer than it felt like.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Maybe there was a point or two where it got a little hairy for Tennessee, but they were in control most of the game. Maybe you'd like to see them put away their opponents quicker. I know I definitely would if I'm a Tennessee fan. But they ended up taking down the Longhorns, and they set up a awesome field of Sweet 16. Not a ton of upsets, which I honestly think these two rounds went damn near perfect because we got our sweethearts in Golke and DJ Burns, and one of them even made it to the Sweet 16. And Oakland took down Kentucky, and it's always great when we get those jokes of the future district manager, the future insurance salesman takes down NBA starters, and all that stuff is awesome. But before we wrap it up on the men's side of things, all we're going to do, we're going to talk about the matchup and who do we think is going to win. You ready?
I'm right.
Let's start in the East. UConn, San Diego State.
UConn. Not even competitive.
Matchup of last year's title game. Yeah, I'm going to go with UConn as well. Illinois, Iowa State is first off, is this the best matchup of the field? And second, who you got winning?
Yeah, I think this is top, number one offense, number one defense. I think defense wins out. I got Iowa State here.
Yeah, I think best matchup. I think there could be some subjectivity to that, but to me, it's by far the most intriguing. As you said, number one offense, number one defense. What wins out? I've gone back and forth, but you know what? I just don't know if Iowa State's going to be able to have an answer for Terrence Shannon Jr. I don't know if they've played someone who has individually skilled and at that size as Terrence Shannon Jr. So I'm just going to go with the Illini, and it would set up for a pretty good UConn Illinois matchup in the Elite Eight. But moving on, North Carolina, Alabama.
Yeah, I had this matchup in my bracket. I got North Carolina beating Bama. I just don't think Alabama is going to be able to stop that North Carolina offense headed by RJ Davis. So I expect UNC to pull out a win here.
Yeah, I mean, I've said a million times North Carolina is vulnerable. I do agree. I just don't think Bama's that team to take them out because, as you said, they do not play a lick of defense. And RJ Davis and Cormac Ryan and Armando Bacot, they'll just feast on a really poor defensive Alabama team. So I totally agree. I've got the heels here. And Clemson, Arizona.
Yeah, we mentioned Clemson being the team no one kind of expected to be here. But with that being said, I got Arizona.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Caleb Love looks like he could win most outstanding player of the tournament the way he's playing right now, and leading the Wildcats into an impressive 2 wins. So I definitely agree on Arizona. Another intriguing matchup: Houston Duke.
Yeah, this one is gonna be interesting. Um, it's gonna be the match. It's gonna come down to whose backcourt can get it done. Cryer and Sheed versus Proctor and McCain. Who's going to come out on top? Give me the more experienced Cougars. I like them in this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely not a bad pick, but I think I'm going to go with Duke here. I think there are a few teams that just have the pure talent to beat Houston, and Duke is one of them. And for one reason or another, they were not playing their best basketball on the stretch, ended up falling down to the 4 line. But yeah, I really think that I think this team has a lot of talent. I mean, McCain, if he shoots the way he did, obviously, Duke will be looking pretty good. But Proctor, Jeremy Roach, he had a looked like he had a finger injury. He'll probably just a dislocation that'll probably pop back in, and he'll be back to playing like the Roach we know. So I'm gonna go with the Blue Devils here to pull off the upset. Next game, Marquette, NC State.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is where DJ Burns' story ends. We've obviously know about Kolek's ability to score, but his ability to play make has really shown out in this tournament so far. I expect him to do the same in this one. Give me Marquette.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the same. Tyler Kolek, you said it. The playmaking has been unreal. Getting his teammates involved. Marquette, I mean, it's night and day what this team is like with and without Tyler Kolek on the floor. So I'm going to go with the Golden Eagles as well. I think they're able to handle NC State. The tape is out now on DJ Burns, unfortunately, and I think Shaka will be able to scheme a defense to stop the big man, or at least if he gets his, not let anyone else get theirs, and kind of stymie the Wolfpack. So I'm also going to go with Marquette. And then to round it out in the Midwest, Purdue and Gonzaga.
Yeah, unfortunately, I hate to do this, but I got to roll with what my bracket has, and that is Purdue advancing.
Yeah, it sucks. It definitely sucks. I would say, honestly, looking at this, I think Gonzaga might be the anti-Duke because Gonzaga has been really impressive thus far. I just don't think they have the talent. Duke has the talent. They haven't been impressive. Gonzaga's the opposite. They've been impressed. They just simply put do not have the talent to beat Purdue. So I'm going to go with the Boilers as well. And then last matchup, I think this is the only one. I guess maybe you can give it to Houston Duke, but Creighton, Tennessee, Illinois, Iowa State, the 2 threes, they're so good, so good. What not to love? Creighton, Tennessee, you got winning.
Give me Creighton here. I really like what I've seen from them in blowouts, in times they've struggled, in close games down the stretch. I just think Tennessee might catch a case of the Virginia. If they come out slow, as we've seen, Texas and obviously Colorado State, they could be in a world full of hurt against this Creighton team.
Yeah. I'd love to disagree, but in my bracket, I have Creighton. All of us, me, you, and Eric, all had Creighton in the Final Four, and I'm not going to go away from my bracket, even though seems like history might tell me that it would be wise to pick against my initial thoughts. But I'm going to go with Creighton. I like what they've got. Their shooting ability and then their inside presence with Kalkbrenner is all a really balanced attack for the Blue Jays, and I really like that about them. So I also have Creighton winning. But that is our men's bracket recap and predictions for the Sweet 16. Before we wrap up the episode, we do have a few questions. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. We're going to start out. This question is from Dana Riley. She asks, should the NCAA consider neutral sites for the women's tourney, or should the men have host sites like the women do?
Yeah, this one is interesting. Selfishly, I'm going to say the NCAA should consider neutral sites for the women's tourney. Would make my life a lot easier coming down the stretch in March. But I kind of don't hate the idea of men's hosting. I really like it, but obviously the women's game, as popular as it's become with the surgence of Caitlin Clark, they can still do home games. and it might get a little dicey when you get like a Duke versus Houston, and or any of the James Madison Duke. Duke obviously would host, but it's just interesting what that would look like. But I think if I had to pick between the two, I'm choosing neutral sites for the women.
Yeah, I am 1,000% on team neutral sites. I do agree though, like if the men hosted, that would be pretty electric. Some of the atmospheres would be crazy. But I'm just 1,000% team neutral site. I understand the thought process of you're a higher seed, so you should be rewarded for that. But your part of your reward in being a higher seed, you get to play the lower quality opponent. Like that's what the seeds do. It's not necessarily it's not a home court thing, especially in March and specifically in the men's tournament when you turn it on and you see the March Madness at center court, the color around like the blue and the green, like the court is perfect. It's gorgeous. It gets you in the March Madness mood. And I think some of that is a little lacking on the women's side when you just see the home court. It feels like if you watched, like I remember I was watching West Virginia and Princeton on Iowa's court.
Yeah,
It
was weird.
It felt AAU esque of where like you're just playing on a random court with it. Just something about it seems off. But when the team does play, it's pretty electric. But when the other teams are playing, it seems a little off. So yeah, I'm definitely on team neutral site, and God forbid the host, the host loses their round of 64. Who's going to the round of 32 game when the host team isn't in it?
That's what happened when Iowa State actually hosted. They got bounced first round, so it's just like, what are we doing?
A lot of the draw is, obviously is that home court or that home crowd, and it goes away with an upset. So yeah, I think all signs point toward neutral site. But next question, Dana Riley again. This time she wants to know: will Audi Crooks be the next Caitlin Clark?
Wow, this is a crazy question. I'm just getting put out now. No. There will not be another Caitlin Clark for a while. If I was gonna say, if this was who's gonna be the face of women's basketball in the next couple of years, I'm looking at USC's Juju Watkins. She had a 50 bomb earlier this season, and has led a USC team to kind of a dominant tournament run so far. But with that being said, Audi Crooks is the real deal. She dominated, obviously, struggled against Stanford, but she's only a freshman, and surrounded by freshmen. So she's going to be a force to be reckoned with in that Big 12 and women's basketball as a whole. But next, Caitlin Clark, I think, is quite a stretch.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the effort, Dana. I really do. But yeah, I mean, what makes Caitlin Clark, obviously, she has a scoring record, right? I mean, that's obviously never been done before. So she does things that's never been done before from a stat standpoint. But there have been so many great players in the women's game, both individually and leading their team to championships. Caitlin Clark's play style has never before been seen in the women's game of someone who can pull it from wherever and will pull it from wherever and sees the entire floor. And as you said, there is no doubt Audi Crooks will be great. She has been amazing her freshman year. She's not hitting step back threes. It's just not her game, and that's okay. She will be absolutely awesome. She will put up crazy numbers. What draws people into Caitlin Clark is the play style, not necessarily the play quality, although that's pretty good too. But the two of them together for Caitlin is what draws the audience, and unfortunately, Audi just doesn't have that play style. But I do appreciate the effort. I do. But moving on, this one from Carol Gotzi. She wants to know, who do you like to win it all in the women's bracket?
Yeah, we kind of glossed over this last episode. We apologize for that. But, dude, as much as I want to say Iowa, their offense runs through Caitlin Clark, and sometimes she has off games. I'll be the first one to admit that. But a team that is dominant every freaking game, no matter who they play. South Carolina Gamecocks, led by Don Staley, just absolutely manhandling these teams. Won 91-39. I don't care who you play. They play Presbyterian. If you beat a team that by 50 plus points, you're incredible. And then to do it by 47 against UNC, and then everyone remembers the SEC championship beat LSU, who is one of those teams everyone is kind of looking how they will do. But give me South Carolina. They've looked the best team all year. I know that's chalky, but no one's even coming close to them.
I mean, 91-39. You know what? Me, you, the pigeon that was on this commercial before, and every other team in women's college basketball have in common. We have the same number of wins over South Carolina this year. 0. They just simply put, they don't lose. They just don't. And I don't know who is going to stop them. I mean, they have to play Indiana next. Indiana, obviously, a pretty good team, but it's just really hard to see who's going to beat this South Carolina. So I also have to go the chalky route because they're undefeated. No one's beaten them, and no one will. It's crazy how good they are and how dominant they have been. And what a difference a coach makes, I think. When you obviously the next team you look at would be LSU, their SEC rivals, who obviously South Carolina has beat twice now. And what a difference a coach makes between those two schools. But lastly, to round it out, this one also from Carol Gotcha. She wants to know, what was the biggest upset in March Madness?
Yeah, this one's been obviously we kind of highlighted a couple of these, but to be honest with you, Tanner, I think I might go Yale over Auburn because no one, and I mean no one, expected that to happen. I had Auburn facing UConn in my Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that didn't happen. Yeah, Yale struggled against San Diego State, but to beat Auburn, who is coming off that conference championship, again, no one expected that. So I think that's my biggest upset, but obviously there are plenty in March.
Yeah, and I'm going to take the other obvious choice. I'm going to go with, Oakland over Kentucky, right? I mean, mathematically, they're the two biggest upsets, a 14 over 3 and a 13 over 4, just from the seeds. But I feel like Oakland is kind of a similar story. Everyone talked about your Samfords. Everyone talked about your McNeese, your Grand Canyon. We talked about, obviously, an 11-6 with Duquesne. It's hard to make that argument.
James Madison, too.
Or even, the
You're good.
12-5 of James Madison. Just no one talked about Oakland. And what percentage of the United States learned that Oakland was not, in fact, in California?
99%.
And they probably learned it when Oakland was up 2 with 10 minutes left in the second half. They're like, oh, and they turned the game on, like, oh my God, this could happen. Oakland's in Michigan? What? Like, it's crazy how little was known about this team. Their absolute box office head coach. And of course, Jack Golke. I didn't see it anywhere. I didn't see it anywhere. I guess one of my buddies back home had Oakland beating Kentucky, so shout out him. But other than that, I didn't see it. We didn't really talk about Oakland at all as a potential upset, and it kind of came out of nowhere. Now, the Kentucky part of it, that's becoming a little bit of a trend. So if you want to argue that, I could see that. But Oakland, man, wow, they came out of nowhere, and it was absolutely awesome. It was absolutely.
Wish it's pretty, but
yeah, well, we got that last year. One more year, we absolutely need it. But that's gonna wrap it up for episode 125 of Crunch Time. We went through each and every matchup in the men's tournament in the round of 64 and in the round of 32. Talked about some winners, some losers. Talked about the women's tournament, something that we did not do last episode. So that is 100% on us. worked it in a little bit this episode. Thank you so much to Dana and Carol for the questions. We really appreciate when you guys do, in fact, weigh in. But follow the podcast on X, TikTok, and Instagram at crunchtime_pod. And you can like and subscribe on YouTube, Crunch Time with the N326 duo. But the clock has run out on this episode, and we'll see you in the next one on Crunch Time.
Yar.